Görlitz has just over 50,000 inhabitants, but also 4,000 buildings protected by the National List of Monuments, making it for many people the most beautiful town of Germany. The town is located about 100 kilometers or 60 miles east of Dresden. One of the protected buildings is the former synagogue. It is one of only a few in Germany who survived the Nazi times. It has recently reopened as a cultural center after many years of decay and subsequent restoration. It's a great pleasure for me to meet here Dr. Markus Bauer, the head of an association who promoted the restoration of the synagogue. How do you feel about it, that it's finally done?
Es ist ein Gefühl tiefer Genugtuung.
It is a feeling of great satisfaction and joy. For over 20 years we have been working towards this day when the synagogue can open again and present itself as it used to be, in all its magnificence and beauty. It represents the newly found self-assurance of the Jewish community in Görlitz in a very special way. For many years they were outsiders, tolerated rather than cherished or accepted. That only changed at the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. And it is bringing back the Jewish heritage of Görlitz, which is a very important element. We are standing in the central hall, in the domed hall of the synagogue. This is the main room in which the congregation gathered. Down here in the lower area is where the men had their place, while the women sat up there in the gallery. And in front of us, in the inner sanctum, so to speak, the Torah Shrine. It is open now. You can see that here, at least in the main section, it is no longer an active synagogue. Really, the shrine should hold a Torah scroll.
Die Architektur, die sich hier zeigt,
the architecture we see here is a synthesis of traditional decorative and architectural elements that evolved in synagogues in the 19th century and new architectural ideas.
und neuen Bauideen.
I know this is only one of the rooms. Shall we have a look at the other rooms?
With pleasure.
Das ist
This is the former meeting hall where the synagogue leaders met. The room is used now above all for school classes who come here to learn about the history of the building and the Jewish community.
Ja, das ist nun ein Raum.
This is a room that means a lot to us. It is the former Weekday Synagogue. This room has now been furnished as a smaller, separate synagogue, a prayer room used for this purpose only.
Zwecke dient. Hier werden sich Juden versammeln.
And in fact, a first service was held here shortly after it opened, the first since 1938.
Zum ersten Mal seit 1938.
So why was the synagogue not destroyed?
Wir wissen es nicht genau.
We don't know exactly. What is true is that in the so-called Crystal Night, when almost all synagogues in Germany were destroyed, there was an arson attack on the synagogue in Görlitz. But the fire brigade came and put it out.
Warum die Feuerwehr das gemacht hat?
It is not clear why the fire brigade did this. Whether there was a brave fireman who ignored the order to let the synagogue burn, or whether this order was not properly communicated, we don't know.
Das wissen wir nicht. Wir wünschen uns.
We hope very much that it was a brave fireman who saved the synagogue of Görlitz.
When textile merchant Otto Straßburg erected this building with a passage in 1907-1908, he was accused of megalomania. After all, comparable buildings can only be found in large cities. But Görlitz was a boom town. And Otto Straßburg was also praised for giving his customers what they wanted. Large and bright storerooms and a great variety of merchandise presented in a beautiful Art Nouveau setting. Otto Straßburg donated rugs and carpets for the synagogue, showing how much pride the citizens of Görlitz took in the newly erected symbol of Jewish life in Görlitz. The Paul Otto is one of the small boutique hotels in Görlitz. In the cellars you can find a water basin which served as a mikvah, a Jewish ritual bath in the Middle Ages. It is open to the public every day. After a plague epidemic in 1389, Jews had to leave town and were only allowed to settle again in 1847, after which Jewish life in Görlitz prospered again. Synagogue means house of gathering. The first synagogue in Görlitz after the Middle Ages was established in 1847 in this building in the backyard of a hotel, which had served as a theater before. When the new synagogue was opened in 1911, it became a storage and workshop for the new theater of Görlitz. Today it serves as house of literature and it keeps the Jewish heritage of Görlitz alive, making it once again a house of gathering. I'm going to meet Rainer Michel, whose family owns this building today.
Nice to meet you. This is the front of the Old Synagogue, and I know from the old documents that there was an inscription saying, "Build me a house and I will live in it." It's taken from the Bible, and we will reconstruct it. And those books are important because they document how many important authors were here and how they influenced not just Görlitz, but Austria, Jerusalem, and the Netherlands.
This is the former textile store of the Toczek family, established in 1868. It thrived, and in 1893 it was very beautifully decorated for the visit of the German emperor. And it is said that he really stopped by and did some shopping. Also shows how well the Toczek family was integrated into the Görlitz society. Like almost all the Jewish families who saw themselves as good and loyal Germans. None of them expected that their fellow citizens would turn against them in such a deadly way just a few decades later. Martin Ephraim was probably Görlitz's most generous philanthropist. He donated money for the Upper Lusatia Hall of Fame, today the Dom Kultury or House of Culture, in the eastern parts of Görlitz on the other side of the Neiße River, which now form the Polish town of Gorgelitz. He also promoted the Silesian Music Festival and he gifted the first art exhibits to the Görlitz Museum. In 1909, he and his family moved into this impressive, newly erected villa. Sadly, Martin Ephraim died in Terezin in 1944. The Ephraim Villa was later turned into a youth hostel, which was considered to be the most beautiful in the GDR. Today, it is still open for overnight stays. The Jewish cemetery was established in the mid-19th century and used regularly until 1934, when the Jewish citizens of Görlitz either fled, emigrated to other countries, or sadly were deported and killed. Attempts to destroy the cemetery luckily failed. Only the metal parts were removed.
This is the tomb of the family Alexander Katz. They endowed the land for the new synagogue in Görlitz, for example, and many things for the museum.
Very interesting. Shall we have a walk around?
Yeah.
This is the oldest burial ground in the cemetery, and you can see that the early graves are still inscribed in Hebrew on the front with the German translation on the back. These Hebrew inscriptions are disappearing from year to year, and you have to really search to find them at all on later graves.
And that was a sign that they had assimilated into the German society.
Yeah.
You have to imagine that none of the families buried here have descendants living in Görlitz. What we are looking at here are history books. It is hard to estimate the loss that the city of Görlitz has experienced from the persecution of the Jews. Unlike other Jewish cemeteries, this one in Görlitz is open every day, except on the Shabbat, of course, and all visitors are welcome.
Thank you. It was very, very interesting, and all the best to you until next time.
Thank you.
In 1948, only 5 Jews remained in Görlitz. Since then, the cemetery has been administered by the Jewish community of Dresden.